So I think, as Mo said, I think everyone in this room already knows that data is a valuable resource for your organisation, and after all, that's why we're here today. But that's something that isn't just acknowledged in the technology industry now. It's acknowledged across the whole business world as well, and we're at the point now where you have that famous quote from Clive Humby that Mo showed about data being the new oil. But even publications like The Economist are actually telling us that data is the world's most valuable resource. And why is that? Well, it's because we know that the most valuable companies in the world are those that are using their data most effectively. So if you look at Apple, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, these are all companies that make the most of their data and use it to further their vision for the company. And they're not just the most valuable companies in the world, they're the fastest growing companies in the world as well. But even so, we still know that we're not necessarily, although we know that data is a valuable resource, we're not necessarily extracting all the value from data that we could do within our organisation. So this was a survey that was done by the Harvard Business Review recently, and we still see that less than half of the data, even the data that's been structured into relational databases, so we know that that data has value, less than half of that is being used for making business decisions. For unstructured data like text, audio, video, images, less than 1%, we're using less than 1% of that for anything at all. We're not analysing less than 1% of that. And even when we do have access to data, often employees have access to the wrong data. They have access to data they're not supposed to access, and they don't have access to the data they need. Even when they do have access to the data they need, they spend a lot of their time actually exploring the organisation, trying to find it, discovering what data they can use, and then preparing that data for analysis. So they're only spending 20% of their time actually on the high value analytics that could actually be furthering their business's strategy. And there are many reasons for this, but one of the biggest reasons is that we've got a few challenges in data management. The biggest one is that data typically exists in silos. And it's always existed in silos in the operational systems that run the business, and that's by definition. But even within the systems in which we bring data into in order to do business intelligence and analytics work, even those systems are now siloed as well. So in any organisation, and you'll probably find this familiar, you might have at least one data warehouse, maybe more than one, maybe 10. You might have data marts that hang off that data warehouse to make it more efficient for particular use cases. Because of limitations in that, you might have brought in newer NoSQL technologies and real-time technologies to deal with those real-time and faster use cases. Because your analysts want access to data that is, and your data warehouse data warehouse resources are being used for reporting use cases, they've implemented maybe analytic databases, appliances, and things like that. And because you've got all of these different systems, you may actually have infrastructure that's being used only for moving data between those systems. So what we used to call ETL, extract, transform, load, what we now probably call data engineering. So you have systems specifically for moving data and transforming data between these systems. So this can be very inefficient. So what it means is that you've actually got increased costs due to using lots of different software, lots of different hardware for storing and managing and analysing data. Your staff have to be trained in, the people administering these systems have to be trained in many different systems. The people actually trying to get to the data have to be trained in many different tools. And because the data is spread so much about the business, you actually have increased security risk because you don't necessarily know where the data is. People aren't getting access to the right data. They can actually see data they're not allowed to see. And this leads to you not getting the business insights you need to actually use data effectively to further your strategy. And we at Cloudera, we've been working on this problem for many years. We've been around in the industry for about nearly 10 years now. So we've been trying to solve this problem by one of the main things that we do for our customers is that we try and bring all of the data into one place that is kind of a multidisciplinary function called what we call an enterprise data hub. We bring all the data into one place and we store it in open source technologies like HDFS, Kudu, HBase. And we can then bring our analytics and our data processing use cases to that data in that enterprise data hub. And that means that you have all of you can put metadata around that data. That's available to all of your analytic use cases. You can put a security and governance model around that data that's then available to all your different tools and applications. So it solves a lot of these problems. But typically organizations in the last sort of 10 years or so have been doing most of this on-premise. Most of our enterprise customers have been doing this on-premise. And what that means is that if you want to expand this, if you have a new use case, then you don't necessarily have the agility to be able to extend your enterprise data hub very quickly to deal with a new use case and to give it the right resources for that new use case. So you don't have the speed of deployment, you don't necessarily have the agility, you don't have that self-service to say, I need some infrastructure for my new use case. So organizations have been moving towards the public cloud. And not everyone can move to the public cloud. There are regulatory reasons for some organizations why you can't do that. But if you can, then you get a lot of benefits from that. So in the public cloud, though, the model looks a bit different. You bring your data into whatever is the shared storage model in your public cloud vendor. So that could be S3 in Amazon. It could be Azure Data Lake if it's Azure. You put your data there, and then you can spin up specific infrastructure. It might be one machine, it might be a cluster of machines, to do particular things. So you might spin up a cluster of machines to do as an analytic database for SQL use cases. You might spin up a very transient cluster just for a few hours to transform some data. And this gives you that massive agility that might be missing on premise. It gives you the speed of deployment for new use cases. But the problem is you don't necessarily have common metadata and a common security and governance model for all of your different use cases that are actually running now in separate machines on the same data, but without that common metadata and security layer. So we've thought about this problem quite a bit for the past few years, and what we've actually announced, only last month, we announced a concept that actually is an extension of some of the things we already do, as well as some new technology. And we call it the Shared Data Experience, or SDX. And what this means is that you can store your data in any of the things I mentioned in the last couple of slides. So in your cloud storage, S3, Azure Data Lake, or within your open source storage, such as HDFS, or HBase or Kudu, or even some other storage systems. And you can run things like, you can run an analytic database on top of it. You can run a transient data engineering workload that could just spin up some machines in the cloud to transform some data very quickly. But you actually have a common data experience no matter what application you're running on top of the data. So you can implement a common metadata that's accessible to every application. You can implement one security and governance model, which gives you the same role-based access control, the same audit capability, the same data lineage capture capability on the data, no matter what application you're running, whether it's a SQL workload, whether it's a Spark workload to do ETL, or what the workload is. You'll have that common metadata layer, so everyone gets the same experience from the data, and everything is tied together from a security and governance perspective. So I can't tell you too much detail about the shared data experience right now. We only have 15 minutes, but we do have a session later at 12:15 where we're going to go into the detail of how we can deliver that shared data experience for your end users. But fundamentally, what we believe is that we can use data by doing this, by having this common layer in place. We can use data to make things that are impossible today possible tomorrow. So entirely new use cases for business. Things that you couldn't do before, you can do with a data platform that has that shared data experience. And just a few examples here. So there are really, what we do with the shared data layer is what we're doing is we're not coming into your organization, we're not doing something, we're not doing an entirely new use case for you. We empower the people within your organization using a powerful data platform to actually do what they need to do with the data. We empower your data scientists and your analysts to actually have access to the data they need for the workloads they need. And there are three areas really, I mean, there's so many different use cases for this technology, but there are three areas where we focus on the most. And the first one is driving customer insight. So an example of this, we have a customer, Marks & Spencer's, who most of you I'm sure have heard of Marks & Spencer's, a big retailer in the UK. And Marks & Spencer's actually, what they were doing before they implemented our technology, they were looking at their point of sale data, their order data, they were doing a very good job of analysing that. But they wanted to understand customer behavior across every channel. So that what they've now done, using our technology and using open source technology, is they brought together their clickstream data, the data that customers are putting on their website as reviews, social data, as well as their point of sale data and order data to understand that holistic customer experience. And they actually built their relatively new membership card, the Sparks card, is built entirely on that data platform because it can give absolutely tailored offers to specific customers based on exactly what they know about their behavior, and they couldn't do that at all without having a data platform that has this capability. Secondly, what we call connecting products and services. So that's really the Internet of Things, the IoT type use cases. And the example here is we have a customer in the US called Navistar, who have a fleet of 300,000 vehicles that they operate. And those vehicles now have sensors in them. But to analyse the data in that sensors, that can give them a huge amount of value. And what they've actually found is that they can, rather than having the vehicles come in on a scheduled maintenance for scheduled maintenance, they actually bring them in when they actually need the maintenance, sort of predictive maintenance type model, and they were spending 12 to 15 cents per mile on maintenance for these vehicles. It's gone down to 3 cents per mile after they've done that, so a massive cost saving for the business. And the last one is protecting your business, and there's lots of different things you can do within this area. So this ranges anything from risk analytics in financial services organisations through to cybersecurity. Obviously, a huge amount of data can be useful for cybersecurity analysis. But one example is that we have a customer, a card services company based out of the US, but totally global, and they brought all their data into one place so that it could be analysed by their analysts and by their data scientists. And by bringing all the data into one place, they actually found the biggest occurrence of fraud in their entire history, and they managed to close down that fraud ring. So again, a huge saving for them and all of their customers. So really, that's all I have to say for today. Thank you for your time. And we actually have another session, I said, at 12:15, where if you want to learn more about the shared data experience, you can do. And of course, come and see us at our stand if you like to know more. But thanks for your time.